Hello and welcome to another episode here at All for United. It's another match preview. The last one went down so well, we thought, why not do it again? But this time, there was no point getting the lovely Sarah from Fulham on because we're not playing Fulham, so that would be a bit pointless. So we have done a little FPL transfer of our own, and as Sarah disappears, never to be seen until the next Fulham game, hopefully, we've replaced them with someone. I love him. I do. I can't say I don't. I've had so many conversations with him during the women's football chat. It's brilliant to get him over here to talk about the men. Sean, how the devil are you, sir? You okay?
I'm brilliant, Barry. Thank you very much. Really looking forward to trying all things Brighton, and this should be a very good game on Saturday.
I mean, it should be. You're not wrong. And of course, we did another transfer. We had Beanie on last time, but in the attempts at trying to shuffle things about a bit, we've got Dan back again. So there you go, sir. How are you getting on? Everything okay with you?
Yeah, I'm good. I don't like how relaxed Sean is about this game, though. Seems very confident.
Well, do you know, if we get straight into it, I'd feel like he almost has a right to be a little bit confident because the stats for Man United Brighton are actually really quite interesting when you start jumping down into them. So it's going to be our 34th game head to head, which in itself is quite a surprise. You would have thought there'd be more games than that over the course of over 100 years, but there hasn't been. And this will not only be the 15th appearance in the Premier League between the two teams, but it's the 15th appearance and 15th match that will be away from home for Man United. Now, Dan, out of those 14 games that we've already played, we've got a 50% win record. So we've won 7 of them. We drew 2. We've lost the other 5. So it's a really, really interesting thing. Now, if I was to tell you that we are in a bit of a situation when it comes to that, and that's just in the away games, obviously, overall, it's not quite so bad. What do you reckon? Are we going to have an opportunity to defeat Brighton? Because our last game against them was a 2-0 win. So that wasn't the end of the world. But what do you reckon? Are you feeling confident? Because like Sean will be, I'm sure when we get to him. What are you thinking?
I'm not as confident as Sean. I can tell you that straight away. Do you know what? Brighton are just a funny side. They turn up quite often in big games when we play against them. They play really good football. They seem to be just immaculately run club in terms of De Zerbi goes, you think, oh, what's going to happen? They bring a 31-year-old we were discussing backstage. We're going to call him Fab because we're struggling with his second name. But they just seem to have a backup plan to everything at the minute, Brighton. Selling players, buying players. Then you think about players they've got coming back from injury. Matoma was obviously a big miss for you last season in a lot of the games. He looks very good again in the first game back. Obviously, an immense dribbler. They've definitely got all of the attributes to cause us problems going forward. So I don't think it's going to be an easy game by any stretch. I don't know. Do you know what? I've got this morning and watched some of the highlights from the Brighton game, and they looked really good. I'm hoping that Sean tells me that Everton looked really bad and it takes a little bit of the gloss off, but they did look good. I think it's going to be a really, really good game. It's a game that you'd imagine that the players should be up for. Man United players should be up for this game. They shouldn't be taking it easy. They shouldn't be thinking, oh, we'll beat Brighton with ease. It's not going to happen. It's going to be a tough, tough game. But I do feel like we've got a chance if the big players step up to the table like your Bruno Fernandes. Hopefully we see Xerxes start as well, to be honest, because I think that will make a big difference. I don't want to see 4-2-2-2-2 again.
You won't see
however many twos they are.
Too
many twos.
Twos. But yeah, listen, it's hard to disagree with what you're saying. And, you know, Sean, we talk about, is this year going to be the year of 21 for Manchester United? Is it going to be the 21st? But actually, if United were to beat you at the weekend, it would be 21 wins against Brighton and Hove Albion. So maybe that might be the only 21 that we managed to get. But look at it from your side. We won the last game at the Amex against you. That was 2-0. Diogo Dalot and Hannibal. Get it? It's not Hannibal. Rasmus. Don't know where Hannibal came from there. Put these glasses out. I have to pop over to Specsavers after the show. But yeah, Rasmus, of course, and Diogo Dalot scoring the goals. But that was the first game that we'd won against you in 6 attempts. Now, that's not including the penalty shootout for the FA Cup semi-final, but it was still 0-0 in order to get us there. So just in normal time of playing football, not a win in 6 games against you. You have been a bit of a bogey team for us, especially when you consider that Erik ten Hag is about to become the joint highest leader, I suppose you'd put him as, in terms of matches played against Brighton, where we'll be joining the likes of Dave Sexton, Ron Atkinson, Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, having managed 6 games against you. So you've kind of had Ten Hag's number over the period of time he's been managing us. So you're feeling like you're going to have that again? And if so, what gives you that confidence that Dan's speaking about?
Yeah, and you say bogey team, like everyone has a bogey team. For Brighton, it's Fulham. We just can't beat Fulham, and I feel like for United, it's Brighton, and I think it goes back to a lot of what United has been in recent years. And there was always a fear factor when you played Manchester United back in the day, and quite frankly, that fear factor is gone now, and teams feel like, oh, we're able to play United at their own game, we're able to play our style. United have to counter against that, and I think Ten Hag hasn't been able to deal with Brighton's style over the last couple of seasons. Obviously, it was Graham Potter, then it was De Zerbi, and now it's Fabian Hertzler. And there are stylistically some changes, but from what I saw against Everton, a lot of Brighton fans are feeling, you know what, this could be a good season, because I think there were some that say we could get a European place. I am not that optimistic at all. I would take a high mid-table, top half finish, but that performance against Everton was really good, and I really liked how some of the players played, how some players was playing in different positions. It was just everything looked really fluid. Everything looked on board. So for Ten Hag, it's another manager he has to try and navigate past. And yeah, I'm feeling quite confident ahead of this one, to be quite honest with you, Barry.
It's an interesting one. It's interesting. It really genuinely is. I'm actually fascinated. The more I've dove into this game and had a look to see what the bits and bobs around it are, the more equal it seems. And that's with no disrespect intended. When you say Man United Brighton, you wouldn't have expected to be sitting there and looking at such a close run thing. 3 is often said as the magic number, Dan. But on this fixture, 4 is the magic number. It's the magic number because it's the most goals that either side has scored in the fixture ever. Manchester United have done it twice, 4-1 win in 1980, and of course the 4-0 win in the FA Cup final replay in 1983. Brighton did it to us in 2022 with a 4-0 win as well. But it's also 4 because Bruno Fernandes has scored 4 goals in 10 games against them. Marcus Rashford has had the most appearances against Brighton. He's played against them 16 times, which when you look at it is almost 50% of the matches we played against Brighton, which in itself seems a bit mad as well. And he's also scored 4. That means he's scored 1 in 4 games, but he hasn't scored in the last 7. Now, when you look at the game that we played on Friday against Fulham, I thought Rashford had quite a good game. But the one thing we still seem to be lacking in that match was that clinicality, that ability to score. He made the chances. Fernandes, he had a couple. We said Rashford had the opportunity. He passed Garnacho in the end. Do you feel like there's the possibility of getting at Brighton's defence? Because Everton had some chances. They absolutely did. But they weren't able to take advantage of it. Do you think that we will be able to? Did you see enough in the last game for us to be able to do that?
Yeah. For us, it was a massive improvement in terms of the shots conceded weren't as bad as what we've seen probably in the last 6 months, and we was creating chances. That means Rashford owes us 2 goals then. If he's not scored in 7, then he owes us 2 goals against Brighton. That would even it out perfectly. Fernandes himself came out afterwards and said that he owes all the FPL managers that got him a favour, so hopefully he pays that. But yeah, we was definitely creating the chances in the first game, and Fulham was really, really stubborn as well defensively. He was very compact. I just remember Brighton for the 3-1 loss when Hannibal scored. He scored with the only shot on target, I think, or his only shot on target for the season. I think it was a stat that we had last year. And I can just remember they swapped. So it was even for about 15 minutes. And De Zerbi swapped something with these players, and our players didn't seem to be able to react to it, and Ten Hag didn't react to it, and they just battered us after that. And it was just a simple tactical change. They was just going down the wings constantly, and it was a little tweak that he made, and we couldn't keep up with. So I'm hoping that they've learned the lesson there. And we was talking about this on the last show with United. We need the ability to be able to swap to more formations than just one and relying on the 4-2-2-2. We need to be able to swap to a 3-5-2, a 4-3-2-1, or whatever, because of the managers that Brighton are bringing in that are inventive, and they're not just, I'll stick to a 4-4-2, that's the way it works. I'd imagine if Brighton are struggling, he'll change the formation. We're seeing it with a lot of managers, in particular Brighton teams, to be honest. They don't seem to play a set way. They can play 4 or 5 set ways, which is a huge, huge problem. We just need to be on it. We need the big players to be on it. I do feel like we'll get chances against them. It's going to come down to who's the most clinical. But the thing I would say is what we've seen last season. Individual players are brilliant when they step up to the plate, but teams often beat us because they play as teams. So we need to start playing as a team more and get rid of this individual stuff, which is one of the frustrating things to me about people saying, why did Rashford pass? He should have passed because Garnacho had a tap and he passed. And if he scores, it's 2-0. It's an easy, comfortable win. So as long as we can create the chances, it's going to be a good game of football. Cue it being a 0-0 now.
Well, you might not be too far wrong, to be honest. In that run of 6 games I was talking about, United didn't score in 3 of them. In the 3-1 loss, it was Hannibal. There you go. So I know I'd seen him somewhere. He scored the goal. And, of course, Rasmus and Diogo scored in the win. The only other game we scored in was an Alexis McAllister own goal, and that was a 2-1 defeat as well. So that run hasn't coincided with a lot of goals for Manchester United. We don't tend to score too many recently against Brighton, whereas they've scored 10 over that same period. So it's going to be interesting. But, Sean, as we look back over how your season sort of started and has begun, you've had some very interesting signings brought in. You spent a reasonable amount of money. Yankuba Minter probably being the most high profile of those, but Ibrahim Osman coming in, Mats Vifa, I mean, that there is £66 million. Malik Yalkue from Gothenburg, and of course, Bregan Gruda from Mainz. So, brought in quite a few, threw a little free transfer in from Arsenal as well, because, why not? But not really. I mean, it's Brighton, so you're maybe not necessarily going to pull out the marquee players. There's lots of names there for a reasonable amount of money, but nobody that you would sit there, certainly in my line of sight, and go, oh, that's a player that I've seen a lot of. So clearly Brighton doing their business. Now, obviously, you got rid of Pascal Gross, which is a very interesting one. He's been a bit of a boogie player for us as well at times. So, to be honest, relieves that we're not going to be playing against him. And then, of course, you had your Everton game, which was incredibly interesting, I thought, watching it. We talk about Karim Mitoma. His goal was just swept in at the far post, nice and easy, and your new signing Minter obviously being the one to get the ball across to him. Danny Welbeck, who we know very well here at Manchester United, getting hold of the ball after it had been intercepted, running towards the area and swiping it into the far post before entering the box even. And then, of course, you've got Adingra as well with the Welbeck assist. So there's players there that are definitely capable of taking advantage. And the thing that I noticed about Everton was that defensively, they didn't seem as up to it as they often have been. They're usually quite good defensively. I chose Pickford as my FPL goalkeeper because even though they may not be great, they don't tend to concede that many. But you really did sort of annihilate them. And the thing that got me was, and we will get on to another question about your manager later, but the thing that he said is that he values the off-the-ball work as much as the attacking productivity, which I think was really an interesting quote. He said, how they work against the ball really matters because we can score in and out of possession. Now, that seems like a weird quote because if you haven't got the ball, you're not going to score. So looking at all of what I've just said there, if I was a Brighton fan, I'd be feeling pretty optimistic as to how the season's going to go. Do you feel like you've got what it takes there to cause the United backline even more problems, especially now that we've shored it up a little bit.
Absolutely. And I was finding interesting what you said that Man United play in a set structure. Because what Brighton under Hurstler don't do is play in a set structure. And that you can start with that looking at the defence. At St. Pauli, he played with a 2 at the back, a 3 at the back, 4 at the back, 5 at the back. He'll change it constantly. Sometimes it'll just be the 2 centre backs because the full backs are pushed in inverted so higher. You'll have this centre defensive mid, which in this case would be Weaver, dropping back a little bit, and everyone be all out attack. And he'll constantly change things during a game. And it's just really exciting. And the players we've brought in, Minter, there's a bit of concern that he might not start because of a concussion substitute he was off for. And some rules say he might not be able to play. We're not too sure about that. But Weaver from Feyenoord has looked really good. It was a poor first half from him, but in the second half, it was absolutely brilliant. He's like a spider, just legs everywhere, winning the ball absolutely everywhere across the pitch. And there's also injuries coming back. I think Hinchelwood coming back in at left back is a really big boost for us, especially with Estupinian out at the moment. And Veltman at right back, I don't think gets the appreciation he deserves. I think he's a really, really solid right back and never gets beaten often. And then you talk about the signings there could be 2 more coming in by the time we play United. Jorginho Rutter from Leeds looks to be on his way, and another that might be done is Ferdi Kalioglu from Fenerbahce, who had a really good Euro 2024 with Turkey at right back. So you add those signings in, and it's just even more options. And I think that's what we were lacking last season with injuries, especially being in Europe. We didn't feel like we had a lot of squad depth, but start of this season, it just feels like there's options everywhere now. And yeah, it just is a good feeling around the club right now. And a lot of people feel like, I know it's only one game against Everton, but we're fans, we're meant to overreact to everything. But it was such a good performance against Everton. But what I really liked about you mentioned the Everton defence there is really quite good, but they sort of stood off at times, but they also pressed. And whichever one they did, because of the way our forwards moved and the midfield moved, whatever they did, there was a plan for it. And that's what I like, is that they're already anticipating what the opposition are doing. They've already got plans for whatever they do. And that's just really exciting right now. And yeah, no, it just feels good. It feels really positive for Brighton.
It's hard to disagree, which is really, really annoying. It's my job to try and disagree, but this one's just not as simple as that. I'm sorry to do this to you, Dan, but there's only been one red card in the games that have been played between Manchester United and Brighton. Can you guess who was the recipient of that red card?
What year was it in?
Sorry.
I feel like I'm not going to have been born.
1909.
I have no idea.
Had you gone with probably the most well-known, oldest player at Manchester United, you would have got it. It was Billy Meredith. So, he's a big name from way back in the day, but my goodness, it just goes to show again, we said this in the Fulham game as well, it's generally played in the right spirit. It's generally played the right way. And there doesn't appear to be too many dramas. But I suppose really the next kind of question for you on this, Dan, is that when you look at the game going forward, they're talking about having a left back that's come back. We've had the defence now that does seem to be shored up. You mentioned Xerxes being given a chance to start. Now, he hasn't done that as of yet. He was on the bench for the Community Shield, didn't come on. He was on the bench for this game, does come on, and then makes just an unbelievable cameo. Is that enough? That 30 minutes? Do you think he was just trying to build him into it? Do you think he might just get the second half in the game against Brighton? Or would it be sensible? And if so, who for? Because like logic dictates, it would be Mason Mount to move to the bench. But then is that fair on him? Because if we're going to keep putting Mason Mount to the bench and he's effectively now not going to be there, who's he going to get the chance to come in for? Where is he? How do we get Mason Mount into this football team so that he's got a fair crack of the whip at being given, that chance to show what he can do? Because we know he's a good player, but at the moment he seems to be doing a bit of a bit of a Del boy, really. He's just doing a little job here and there to see what he can do and hope that he finds a watch in the garage and he gets the jackpot so he can play again.
Yeah, well, we don't know his best position. I asked this question a few weeks back on All for United. Because of his injury issues last season, we genuinely don't know where Mason Mount's best position is starting for Manchester United. And I think the answer is there isn't one at the minute. Knowing Ten Hag and what we saw last season in particular, I don't think the team's going to change. I think it's going to be a 4-2-2-2. There might be a change in Garnacho in for Ahmad, which would be mad, but that's where I can see him going with it. You think Rashford might be the one because Ahmad was really effective pre-season and looked good in the game itself. But this is where we're going to find out whether Ten Hag's really got the stones to be the Manchester United manager going forward, to be honest. Like, I'm not calling for his head or anything like that. I'm just saying that he's now got the options to be able to switch in De Ligt for Maguire, to be able to make changes up front, change formation, do something different within games. He's got options now that he just didn't have last season because of injuries. So he might start with a 4-2-2-2 because, let's be honest, Brighton keep the ball really well, compact in midfield, very good on the ball. So he's probably going to feel like he needs the legs. We said against Fulham, and it wasn't to downplay Fulham, but should we really need to do that against Fulham? If we all on form, we shouldn't really need to play two players that we know will cover ground because we should be better on the ball to not have to do that. I would argue against Brighton, you've got to show them the respect that you would need a Mount and a Fernandes to chase the defence down, to get up the pitch, across the pitch, keep the gap in midfield small. So I think he would probably be right to do that. It's then just how does the game progress? Do we bring on Xerxes because it's not working out? I mentioned it on another show. Arnie Slot took off a centre-back at the weekend, and everybody thought it was injury, and he came out and he went, no, he kept losing his duels, one-on-one duels, so I took him off at half-time. That's the sort of bravery you need when you're in the Premier League. So it'll be interesting to see what he does. I genuinely think, bar maybe one player, the lineup's probably set, and I would question, it's either going to be Ahmad Garnacho or Garnacho Rashford, depending on how fit Garnacho actually is. But that's probably the only change I would see, and I think formation will be the same. But again, I think it's credit to Brighton because I'm sorry thinking we need that. We need that press. We need the energy. They're a good football team.
Well, this is it. I mean, they're going to press against us. We know that. That's exactly what he was saying in the quote, old Fabian Herzler, that's what they do. It's how their forwards work off the ball. So they are going to be pressurising our defence, and we're going to need to make sure we do the same to them. And it could well be the battle of the presses. But simple question for you, Sean. Why do you think Brighton employed a literal toddler as your manager? Because that has come a little bit left field. Now, you were saying backstage how pleased you are with him, so I am joking for anybody watching. But, you know, what's your views on what he's done so far?
Yeah, it's a very Brighton appointment. So if there was any other club, I think you'd look at them and think, what on earth are they doing? What are they trying? But because it's Brighton, it's like, oh, they must know something that we don't. And I'll put my hands up, I didn't know much about him. But the more you read about him, you sort of look tactically at what he's done, you're thinking, God, it's like De Zerbi, but more, which is ridiculous because De Zerbi was this madman to begin with in terms of his tactics and his philosophy. But this guy just seems to have learned slowly. And what he did at St. Pauli, because St. Pauli weren't the biggest club in that second tier, but to get promotion ahead of the likes of Hamburg, for example, that's not easy. That's a huge job he's done there. And he was only 29 when he took that job, and he got them promoted. That just it blows my mind. And we all talk about what he does from an offensive position, but if you look at the defence, last season Brighton didn't keep their first league clean sheet until February. He's done it in his first game. Mentally, that is huge. Like the fact the players have kept that first clean sheet in the first game when it took them over half a season last year, that says, oh look, yes, going forward, he knows what he's doing, but defensively, he also knows what he's doing. And also taking off Lewis Dunk after 70 minutes, that's something even a season ago you say, well, never take off Dunk, that is our captain. But he's done his first game, he said, yep, we're going to keep him ready. And that's huge. And he sort of, even though he is so young, he has commanded this respect from the players, and everyone seems to have bought into it. And yeah, it is just, I keep saying it, but it just is exciting at the moment. I'm so intrigued to see how he gets on, because after United, we've got Arsenal, and that is two huge games for him to prove himself. But if he gets good performances out of those two, then sky's the limit for us.
Certainly is. We do like Lewis Dunk. He scored as many goals for Manchester United against Brighton as Scott McTominay. So it's great news. Hopefully he can get the third. That would be really helpful if we could arrange for that. Last sort of question before we go into our score prediction is as follows. I mentioned there's only been 33 games between Brighton and Manchester United. Now, from a United point of view, probably our biggest match and certainly the biggest game that we played was, of course, the FA Cup final of 1983. It was a bit of a dodgy one. Gordon Smith took the lead for Manchester United before, for Brighton, before Frank Stapleton and Ray Wilkins switched it around, and it looked as though Man United were going to win the FA Cup until Gary Stevens scored in the 87th minute. And my goodness, we ended up with what you'd never get nowadays, which is a replay of the final. So 5 days later, obviously, United came out. Brian Robson banged in a couple. Norman Whiteside scored, and Arnold Muren scored from the penalty spot to ensure that United won the FA Cup in 1983. Maybe, from Brighton's point of view, one of their biggest ones would be the 99th minute penalty winner from Alexis McAllister in May 2023. I'm just very intrigued. Do either of you have a standout match for the Brighton Man United archives? Is there anything there that makes you go, do you know what, I remember that game? It could be for good or for bad. So, Dan, to you.
Not really, to be honest. Was it Brighton where we got the penalty that was after the whistle, or was that a different game? Because that stands out. I can remember what Maguire had Nick Goldwood's an arm being up in here, and we scored what 4 minutes after the full-time whistle, something like that, with a penalty. So yeah, that's probably a standout one for me.
Yes, indeed. That was, I can tell you exactly, that was the 26th of September 2020.
COVID season.
It was COVID season, absolutely. And what a game that had been. Neil Maupay had scored from the penalty spot in the 40th minute. Then Lewis Dunk, God bless him, scored the own goal in the 43rd minute. Then Rashford goes and scores in the 55th. Then Solly March equalised in injury time, the 95th minute. And then the whistle goes, but we get the penalty.
It was Maupay as well, wasn't it, that handled it?
Yeah.
Yeah, it was, yeah. I can remember the Twitter reaction afterwards. It was fantastic. Yeah.
So, yes, absolutely. That was the game I was thinking of, but I didn't want to say that one, because otherwise it steals your thunder. So you're welcome. Sean.
It's quite rare to say, but there are many. There are many for Brighton in recent memories that stand out. That opening game, 2018-19 season, 3-2 win, Glenn Murray scoring a really nice finish. That game that kept us up in that first season, Pascal Gross getting the winner where it just sneaked over the line. The wins at Old Trafford, like, that's huge. Like, my dad doesn't remember ever us winning at Old Trafford. So, that there was one, we had the first one, but that 3-1 last season, that was the game I thought, my God, we're an actual team here. Like, we are, I thought, we're a force. This is it. They're all going to fear us. And then we finished 11th. So it doesn't quite match. But it's just, I think these last few years just shown how much we've grown as a club, that we're competing with Man United. Like, you can say all you want about Man United. This is still Brighton and Hove Albion. There are still levels between us and Man United. And the fact we're competing regularly with them, it just says so much about the way we've grown. And I know, probably the way United have gone as well, but I'd rather focus on us. So just the way we've grown in the last couple of seasons, there's just so many highlights that stick out to me.
No, absolutely. I can't disagree. We're going to double round. We'll go back to you, Sean. What's the score going to be on Saturday morning?
It's just, do I think we keep a clean sheet? Are we capable of keeping a clean sheet? Because I do think we'll score. And yeah, I'm going to go 2-0. 2-0 to Brighton.
Oh, it's brave, that. Brave. And I told everybody I liked you. This is not going to go down well for me. Dan, what are you thinking?
I'm going to go for a very, very good game, but I think it's going to be a 1-1 draw.
Interesting. I'm going 2-1 United. I do think Brighton are probably going to score because, like I say, they've just been a bit of a nightmare. But I can just see Ten Hag's super match day Reds coming through and just about squeaking across the line. And I've got to believe that because, again, as you said, we're fans. We've got to go down that route a little bit. So I do think it's possible. But I think the sad thing is that any one of those scorelines is absolutely possible. And that's what makes the fixture so fascinating. Well, guys, we've done it. 30 minutes exactly, which is great news. So well done, you two. We hope you've enjoyed listening to this, or you've been driving home or doing whatever it is you're doing. Been a pleasure. Sean, thank you very much for joining us. If there was anybody watching this from the Brighton and Hove Albion persuasion, where could they find your work?
Yeah, so just my Twitter there, @Mishra. That's where I do most of my work. I'm based in Wales. I know I'm a Welshman supporting Brighton. It just doesn't make sense really, but yeah, you can find all my work there, all Wales stuff, women's football in particular. So yeah, just give me a follow there.
Excellent. There we go. You know where to find Dan because he's here all the time. So there we go. Good stuff. It's been a pleasure. Thank you very much. Cheers for watching, and we'll see you for the next one.